Hello everybody and welcome to another new player tip video with myself, Eric, and everyone's favorite Russell's here. We love Russell. Okay, so today we're talking about Carolyn Fern, so why don't we dive in and get this going. I'm going to share some tips, Eric's going to ask some questions, and hopefully maybe, learn something about Carolyn Fern. As I just talk about, I'm not talking everything about the character. Carolyn Fern is actually a pretty complex character, especially when it comes to deck building. But I'm going to cover as much as I can. So Carolyn Fern, 3/4/2/2 for her stat line. She is the psychologist. Her reaction ability is after one of your card effects heals horror from an investigator or ally asset, the healed card's controller gains one resource. So she's support, but she doesn't need to be just built as support. This is, I think, the most important thing about Carolyn. There are, on our channel, we have 4 generic coverall styles of investigator. The goon, which is just responsible for enemy management. So enemy management, it can be evading enemies, it can be locking down enemies in other ways. You just need to, their job is to deal with enemies. There's clue management, so pushing the game forward, getting clues.
I believe you refer to them as cleavers.
Cleavers, yes. There is the flex, which kind of does a little bit of both, but not as good as the specialists. And then there is the support, which Travis often jokes that when you say I'm going to play support, it means I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to get clues, I'm not going to kill enemies, I'm just going to help you do better. And it is an archetype that you can actually do really well with, but Carolyn can actually do clues very well.
I was going to say, her stat line doesn't seem like it's leaning towards anything other than clues.
Mm-hmm. She can build janky fight decks. You can definitely do it with her card pool. You can build a little bit of janky fight decks for it.
I love it.
But yeah, she's a very good soul cleaver as well as getting the job done, but she is also really good at supporting. I think the best way to build Carolyn is to do your job while also passively supporting other people's incomes. On to Carolyn. Well, her ability certainly reads like a support ability. She can also be use that for value on top of other traditional roles. But Carolyn's real strength is her incredibly wide card pool. So she has Guardian 0/3, Neutral 0/5, cards that heal horror, level 0 to 5. So if the card heals horror, she can play it. So her card pool is incredible.
And then up to 15 Seeker and Mystic cards.
0/1. So
this is what an education looks like. This is why people go to school at ARKHAM.
There actually is another investigator, Vincent Lee, the Doctor, who has pretty much the same deck building with a few class switches and also healing damage instead of horror. They're super exciting to build with. She also has a restriction, no weapon cards levels 1 to 5. She's not here to kill people. She's here to help people. She's a psychologist. So this is where why Travis really likes Carolyn, why a lot of Carolyn players really like Carolyn, because there's a lot of versatility when it comes to her deck building. It's one of those things where the front side of the card is a nice perk, but her ability is really the back side of her card.
Can I ask a weird question then? How powerful would a character be that had no front side, but could use any card in the game?
It would be pretty powerful, I think.
Okay.
If they had passively the entire card pool 0 to 5, I think that would be you would get incredible combinations of things. I don't know if it would. I think it would make the investigator too boring for that to be a thing, right? Limitations breed creativity,
absolutely,
right? And other bull crap like that. But it would be very powerful.
Okay, yes. I'm just curious because I'm looking at this going, this is super powerful, but then I'm like, as a new player, how powerful is the card pool versus the front ability actually?
Yeah, no, there's a lot. That's actually one thing you see that is pretty common. Is that most investigators, the most common deck building is 0/5 of their main class and 0/2 of a secondary class. That's because once you get to level 3, you start to get to the real specific identity cards of that class. So, when a card says that it heals horror, it means it. So, Deny Existence 5, when you would take horror, you can instead heal horror. But she can do the other things on the card too, but she can play Deny Existence 5. She can play Peter Sylvester because he, at the end of your turn, heals a horror from Pete Sylvester. There's Ancient Stone, the thing that you saw me play with Harvey. When you draw cards, you can heal horror. There's Meat Cleaver, which is a weapon that, as an additional cost, if you defeat an enemy, you get to heal a horror.
But she can't take weapons.
She can take weapons as level 0. She can take this is a level 0 weapon.
Oh.
And there's actually we built one on the channel. A lot of people built it. It's the Carolyn Fern, the psychologist, and she kills people with a meat cleaver. That's one of those janky decks. There's Spirit of Humanity, which heals. You can add a curse token to the bag to heal a damage and a horror. And there's also Earthly Serenity, which is just a brain healing spell for each point you succeed by. You can spend charges. And the crazy thing about all these cards is they also proc her ability. So every time you're healing horror, the person you're healing from is gaining a resource, which is pretty damn spicy. So yeah, with all these cards and more at her disposal, it's hard to see why her deck building... Well, it's not hard to see why her deck building is considered another ability of hers, right? Because it's like a gigantic card pool, and you can take advantage of it in really cool ways.
She's a blue control deck.
Yeah, she's good at, like, she can basically stop the game from killing people through horror very well.
Yeah.
But we're going to hop back to her front side because this is where, like, the tips really come in. This was all, like, kind of just to set the scene for Carolyn, but now let's talk about some actual tips that you can take advantage of while playing Carolyn. If a card heals from multiple cards at once, one resource is given for each horror that was healed. Because if you note, there's no limit on her reaction ability. So if we use Soothing Melody here, which is bonded to Hollowed Mirror, it's heal 2 damage or 2 horror from among investigators and her ally assets or location. So it heals from investigator or ally asset. So if we go back to Pete Sylvester, who was a few frames away, his was at the end of your turn, heal 1 horror from Pete Sylvester. That gives you a resource as well. So Soothing Melody, I heal a horror from you, I heal a horror from me, we each gain a resource. So there's no limit, and if one card heals multiple sources, it works really well for that.
Or I do something like... I heal a horror from me, you heal a horror from your Pete Sylvester. Oh, wait, no, it would have to be my Pete Sylvester to do
it. It would have to be just, no, because it's from an investigator or ally asset, that healed card's controller. So if you heal my ally as well, I would gain a resource from that.
So, for example, I could heal myself for 1 horror, heal your Pete Sylvester for 1 horror, and then your Pete Sylvester could heal you for 1 horror.
No, because Pete Sylvester heals horror off of himself.
Right.
And I wouldn't get it from that.
Okay.
However, if we go on this, say you had 3 horror healing that you could give out. Mm-hmm. If you did 1 to me, 1 to my ally, and then 1 to me, I would gain 2 resources from that.
Wow.
Yeah, which is really cool. Carolyn can make a lot of money. She can make a lot of money. But you gotta look for ways to use that money to take advantage of it. She can't play weapons, but she can play every level of Dynamite Blast. There's no stopping her from doing that. So this is actually kind of something that, like, I put in all of my Carolyn decks. I just put Dynamite Blast in. It's really good, it's very powerful, and it's expensive. But Carolyn can take advantage of the resources to get that. Another example here is Keen Eye. This is a permanent. You can spend 2 resources to get +1 book or fist for the phase. And then combat training, you can also spend resources to get +1 fist or foot. Also gives you some physical soak as well, which may be a bit harder to find in some Carolyn decks. So yeah, you can make a lot of money. So maybe ask yourselves, how can I take advantage of that money? And it's Dynamite Blast. It's really good. It's very fun.
I love that this character is the way that I understand and build Magic decks, where it's like, how do I make Triskaidekaphobia a good card?
Yeah.
And Carolyn is that card. It's how do I get around all these weird limitations to win the game?
Yes, 100%. And that's like like going back to what I said earlier, how deck building is like her ability. She is a deck builder's dream, right? Because there's so many different avenues you can explore, which is really cool. Carolyn can utilize different allies in powerful ways, so try to find the ally that works best for your deck's game plan. There's a lot of powerful allies that you can play in her colors. And then also with their hair. So Pete Sylvester, heal a horror at the end of your turn. Forbidden Knowledge, you can take a horror, put it on Pete to move to basically be another resource engine. A little 2-card combo there. Gurish is probably, Gurish, I played him in Mark
We
Harrigan.
love Gurish.
Every time he heals a horror, you also get to gain a resource as well. So this card is going to just passively pay itself back while helping people pass tests. There's Field Agent, you get +1 book. And you can exhaust her and deal a horror to her to discover clue your location. Any sort of ally healing makes Field Agent like an endless engine of free clues, all while giving you resources in the process. So, like, other people can do these things, but Carolyn can do it while also benefiting on top of it. So you should really be asking yourself, what ally do I want to do with Carolyn, and how am I going to take advantage of that in ways that other people can't?
I think Field Agent, just because of art and flavor and effect, might be my favorite card in the game right now.
It's a great card, yeah. It's one of the new cards too, so yeah. It's a great card. And it's great in Carolyn to just continually heal and bring it back. You can also make it Trusted. Trusted gives +1 health and sanity to the attached ally. So you can just make it huge. Pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff. And you might be asking, how can she play Gurish? Gurish is a level 4 card. Gurish heals horror.
Of course, so she's allowed to, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. One thing to be aware of is that Carolyn's signature weakness can potentially stop some Carolyn decks from doing what they want to be doing, hard stop. So it's, you put into play with 4 horror on it. Horror on Rational Thought may be healed as if it was Carolyn Fern. If there's no horror on Rational Thought, discard it. You cannot heal horror from cards other than Rational Thought. You cannot gain resources from Carolyn's Fern ability. So it basically turns off her healing.
Right? I love this.
It's a great design, yeah. And also we always joke that Rational Thought isn't a weakness, but maybe in Lovecraft world it is, right?
No, and see, as an atheist materialist, I love this. I'm like, yeah, this is me.
Yeah.
This is 100% me just being like, this is not real.
Yeah, just cope. What is it, copium? That's what's going on right there.
Yeah, copium.
So it's one of those things that you just should be aware of it if you are planning on healing. This is actually something I've seen where if you build a Carolyn deck that's not healing, you could just be this will just stop all passive gain from your investigator and essentially turn the front half of your investigator off. So if your game plan is to support, heal, or gain lots of resources through ability, you'll want to pack more healing than you think. Just something to be aware of. I don't think you need to go overboard. This is actually in our Discord, the most common question people have actually been asking right now is, how do I build Carolyn Fern? Because it's so deep. And the big thing is, how much healing do I put in here?
Is it possible to build a Carolyn deck that builds around Rational Thought by just not worrying about it?
Yeah.
Your Psycho Carolyn is just like, I'm just killing things. I don't really care about my horror healing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there definitely is. You could just build like Stat Ball Carolyn, where you just care about your stats, and the healing is just like, you're playing for your deck's card pool, but not for the healing part, but just for the depth of the card pool. That's entirely possible.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. We got one more tip for all of you. A few videos ago, I mentioned something in the Diana Stanley video about the for each every rule. So just as a reminder, they recently changed on the newest FAQ that for each and every time there is a for every, it happens in, and you have to make a choice. So it's like, for every point you fail by, either discard a card or take a horror. It happens in individual chunks. It doesn't happen like in one chunk. So it's like, you choose one damage, or you choose one horror, you take one horror. You choose one horror, you take one horror. You choose one horror, you take one horror. So you take 3 horror, you take 1 horror 3 times as opposed to 3 horror once. However, Carolyn, you can take advantage of this. Carolyn and Earthly Serenity packs a serious punch with this ruling, because Earthly Serenity, test brain 0. For each point you succeed by, you may spend 1 charge to heal 1 damage or 1 horror from your investigator. So, if you heal, for example, 6 times on this, you choose horror 6 times, it sees each of those choices independently. So you gain resources for each point that you heal. This is one of those things where, like, this was like one of the upsides that a lot of people saw for this new ruling. I personally still think the ruling is great. And I think that I like interactions like this, that while there are downsides to it, there's also big upswings to it as well. Yeah. And that's Carolyn Fern, the psychologist.
I want to build a Carolyn Fern deck now. This is the curse. This is the curse of this tip video.
Yeah, no, she's really cool. She's really fun, and she always impresses me in new ways every time I play her. Because I didn't include in this video because it's a whole other thing. There's an archetype that came out on Edge of the Earth called Synergy, which is basically about playing as many different class cards as you can of different colors. She plays that archetype very well. So it's really cool. Carolyn Fern's really sweet. And huge thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. In a few weeks, Eric and I are going to be back for another tip video for one of my personal favorite investigators, Joe Diamond. So we're going to get that going. We'll see you all then. But in the meantime, have a good one. And as always, GG's.